rough Cornish jerkin, who stopped by the table and casually pinched out the candle flame as he sat down. In the darkened corner, the two of them fell into a murmured conversation, the younger man doing most of the talking, Jack answering only briefly. Their conversation, however, became contentious, and as it went on, Jack's brows lowered belligerently, his mouth set in an increasingly stubborn line, and he shook his head to every question. The evening's merriment flowed around them, cries of laughter and shouted stories, clouds of tobacco smoke and clinking of glasses. But for all the attention they paid, the pair in the dark corner might have been alone in an empty room. After a while, their discussion came to an end, and they sat in silence. Then the younger man gave a careless shrug of his broad shoulders, as if saying, "Enough, I'm done with you," and got up and left the pub. Jack fetched another half-pint from the bar, returned to his corner to drink it alone, and then left too, a bit unsteady on his feet. The table was immediately seized by 3 men with a deck of cards, a match was put to the candle, and a rowdy game got underway. Once outside, Jack took his lantern from among those lined up on a shelf and hesitated. It was past 10, and a full moon had risen, silvering the Cornish heath. The rocky path gleamed whitely, like the Milky Way. He was only a little drunk, and he'd walked the path along the sea cliffs of Housel Bay a good many times in the 8 or 9 months he'd lived and worked at the Bass Point wireless station. No need to light the lantern. Head bent, shoulders hunched against the wind which buffeted the lizard, Jack trudged along the cliff-top path, thinking angrily about the demands Wolfe had made. It wasn't fair, wasn't right, that's what it was. He'd already given them more than he'd signed on for. In the circumstance, and a bloody difficult circumstance it was too, anything more would call attention to him, which would make the situation difficult, dangerous even. And Wolfe hadn't mentioned paying him any more, had he? Jack grunted scornfully. Of course he hadn't. This one was just like the other one they'd sent, wanting something for nothing, playing on his patriotism. It was all a load of rubbish, that's what it was. He wasn't in this business because of loyalty to his native country, or his family, or any of that fancy stuff. He was in it for himself, pure and simple, and it was time they recognized his value and paid him what he was worth. And what was more, there was no way to get his hands on the bloody thing. Even when Gerard brought it to Bass Point for testing, he never let it out of his sight. And as soon as the test was completed, into the box it went, and back to Poldhu. You'd think it was a pot of gold. Well, that was that, and an end of the bloody business. Within the fortnight he'd be gone on holiday and well out of it. This place was beginning to get on his nerves. End of the earth, the local folk called it, and by damn they were right. He paused to look down at the silver surf, pounding on the glittering black rocks at the foot of the cliff far below. End of the earth, that's what it was. Nothing beyond the toe of the lizard but a great lot of water, and America, somewhere out there beyond the western horizon. Standing there on the edge of the cliff, facing the silver sea, he might have been the last man in the world. But he wasn't. Some 50 yards behind, a man in a dark jacket and hat was picking his way along the same cliff path. He went gingerly, for the moon's quicksilver light was pure trickery, and the rock-strewn path was brushed with deceptive shadows. A shorter distance ahead of him, along the headland path, a man in a Cornish jerkin watched as well, the tip of his cigarette glowing briefly in the shadow, then vanishing, ground underfoot. If either of them saw what accident befell the wireless operator, no one else knew. If either of them, or someone else, was involved in the accident, no one else knew that either. All that was known was what was discovered by a fisherman the following morning: a lantern abandoned in the path, and a man's broken body, sprawled face down on the rocks at the foot of the cliff, just out of reach of the greedy sea. Chapter 1. Tuesday, 30th of June, 1903. Chelmsford.